Joined now by Kyle Rowalnd from the Blade. And Kyle, this Buckeye team just keeps on rolling. No pun intended off in your last name. But every week it seems like we're saying, okay, this is going to be the test for Ohio State. Well, Nebraska was supposed to be the test going on the road. And if it was a test, A-pluses all around.
Yeah, not much of a test. 5 games, unbeaten and unchallenged. It's just been like a ball rolling downhill, gaining speed week after week. I'm shocked by what Ohio State's done, not because they don't have good players. Obviously, they're as talented as any team in the country. But I kind of bought into some of the questions around the team. New head coach, whole new defensive staff for a defense that was abysmal last season. A quarterback who, while highly touted, was very ordinary in the spring and essentially had not played in college football. All those questions, just throw them out the window, crinkle up the paper. It's just been an outstanding 5-game stretch here for Ohio State. The offense is as good as any in the country. The defense, same. Special teams have been great. There's no deficiencies anywhere you look. And we keep saying every week, finally there's going to be a challenge. Maybe it'll happen this week. Who knows? But I also think it's time to readdress their schedule. Cincinnati is not bad.
There haven't been any huge games on Ohio State's schedule, but their schedule is not nearly as bad as some people are making out. They have beaten a bunch of good teams, no lousy teams. Maybe Miami's a lousy team, although Miami beating Buffalo last week. That's a bit of an eye-opener in the MAC. The Ohio State schedule isn't as bad as people perhaps thought it would be.
It's bad because Ohio State's killing these teams. That's kind of like the perception. I just think A-pluses all the way around so far, and I think they're the real deal. I know more than half the season remains, but it's hard to really find too many blemishes, and it's hard to foresee things going drastically wrong at this point. They're just so locked in. They seem to be playing with an energy, and it's kind of a 180 from what happened last season.
Another huge question mark coming into this season was the offensive line having to replace 4 starters. Offensive line hasn't missed a beat, and in the win against Nebraska, we saw Joshua Alabi, who was spot start in the Rose Bowl, spot start against Nebraska, but on different sides of the line, which is kind of like a middle infielder playing shortstop one week, second base the next week, yet they didn't miss a beat, and Alabi was named the player of the week for Ohio State.
Yeah, remarkable performance once again. What that line has been able to do is really, really impressive this year. That on the offensive side of the ball, that was clearly the biggest question, I think, coming into the season. Really have improved tenfold, comparable to like what the defense has done this year so far. Greg Studrawa was a guy that a lot of people thought was not going to be retained. He was, and not only is his line doing awesome, he's also recruiting well right now for Ohio State. So that was obviously a good move by Ryan Day. But that unit's got a lot to be proud of so far. They've protected the quarterback really well. Throwing interceptions is the fault of a quarterback or whatever, but the offensive line also plays into interceptions. He hasn't thrown an interception yet. Obviously, the running backs have had all kinds of room. Master Teague especially has really come on here these last few weeks. So a lot of good things for Ohio State's O-line play.
Let's talk about what this rush attack's going to go up against, because Michigan State, we know Mark D'Antonio, who made his bones on defense, was the defensive coordinator for Ohio State in 2002, the national championship team. His defenses are always very good. His defenses have had a way of really mystifying Ohio State. Certainly look back at both the 2013, the Big Ten championship game in 2015, the loss in Columbus that cost Ohio State perhaps a repeat of a national title. Michigan State's defense is going to be good. It's going to be the best rush defense that they've faced this season. It's one of the top 3 rush defenses in the nation. It's going to be a test for the Ohio State rushing attack, is it?
Yes. I think the offense will be tested this week. I think next week when we talk again, we'll say they passed with flying colors again. But defensively they'll be tested, or offensively they'll be tested, defensively probably not. But Michigan State just period, going back to the 70s, has just always been a thorn in Ohio State's side, especially when the Buckeyes have national championship aspirations. I know that kind of is hanging over the team, and Ryan Day talked about that specifically. I don't buy into it being an issue this year. Michigan State's offense is just too bad. But
So you're not buying the Brian Lewerke hype after what he's done the last couple of weeks?
no, not at all.
Okay.
And their defense, the original question, is really good, but I almost liken it to last year's Indiana-Michigan game, the week before Ohio State. Indiana did all these things, and people were like, whoa, Ohio State does all those things really well. This could be interesting. Well, once again, same team, Indiana last week, Michael Penix Jr., quarterback, had a pretty solid game. They put up a decent amount of yards, scored some points. I don't know. I don't think that is a good I think that's foreshadowing bad things for Michigan State to come.
A couple of weeks ago, we had Damon Arnett saying he thinks this team can win the Natty. On Tuesday, we had Justin Fields saying he thinks this could be one of the best Ohio State teams ever. So there's confidence in this Ohio State team, yet it doesn't seem as if Ryan Day will allow them to be set up for an upset. But you say that every week until there is that upset.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Actually, going to have a story in tomorrow's paper about this, how Ohio State's almost become like a national darling this week, which is a very weird position for Ohio State to be in. They're a polarizing program that most people love to hate. I think Ryan Day is such a likable coach that that's part of the reason why maybe people aren't hating on him as much this year. But, I mean, Kirk Herbstreit, Reese Davis, David Pollock, Desmond Howard, all those guys on game day
Even the dreaded Mark
May. Yeah. I mean, like, everyone is saying Ohio State's the best team in the country, which I think they are the most impressive. They're playing as well as anyone. Sometimes that is, quote unquote, the dreaded kiss of death. But I don't see too many slip-ups on the schedule. A lot of their tough games are at home. Michigan State, Penn State, Wisconsin have to go to Michigan. They're just too talented on both sides of the ball. And the biggest difference now, as opposed to the previous two seasons, the defense is elite. Mm-hmm. So it's not just this great offense, and maybe you have one of those days where another team can create some major problems for Ohio State's defense. I don't see that happening this season.
To me, it goes back to one of the Woody Hayes legends that Woody Hayes would always tell his players, if somebody pats you on the back, kick him in the shins, and unless it was an 80-year-old woman, don't do it then, because he didn't want his team to get complacent and to buy into the hype. I think Ryan Day is going to use that legend this week with the Buckeyes. Well, let's talk a little more about this Ohio State defense. Chase Young, he has been out of this world. He's leading the nation in sacks. And Mark D'Antonio on Tuesday basically said, I don't think of Chase Young as a human being. He's something other than a human being.
Yeah, I mean, he's been like the Incredible Hulk, I guess you could say, so far this season. Unblockable, literally unblockable. I mean, after the first series of the Nebraska game, aside from them throwing an interception and Ohio State scoring, I could just tell this is going to be a blowout. Chase Young, first play of the game was in the backfield. He spent the whole night in the backfield. He's just a major problem for teams, and I think looking back to last year, you can see how much Bosa being out was such a problem. Defense still wasn't going to be great, but when you have a guy on the defensive...
Bosa would have changed the equation.
Exactly. I mean, when you have a guy that can just get into the backfield in like 2 seconds every play, that is a major problem for opposing quarterbacks. But it's everywhere. I mean, the linebackers, so improved. Al Washington has just done a remarkable job. And the secondary has to be as good as any in the country. I mean, Okudah, Arnett, all those guys are just, shut down, lockdown guys. Okudah, 3 interceptions the past 2 games. I expect kind of more of the same going forward. It's just a heck of a unit all the way around.
You liken Chase Young to the Incredible Hulk. Chase Young, his brand for himself is Predator. Now, Chase Young can't make any money on this Predator image, at least not right now. But if he was in California in a couple of years, he might be able to. Earlier this week, California passing the Fair Play Act, also referred to as the Name, Image, and Likeness Act, which allows college kids in California starting the year 2023 to be able to market themselves and make money while in college. Obviously, the NCAA is not happy about this. Several other states are moving forward with similar legislation. Florida's got some legislation that perhaps will go into effect 2020. Now, today, Gene Smith did address this. Gene Smith is part of a working group who's working with the NCAA, talking to Division I, Division II, Division III schools to try and come up with a solution to get some sort of pay-for-play, NIL, something giving some money back to the players, and it, of course, is causing a lot of consternation. It's a very passionate subject on both sides, and you get people talking about this, and they are firmly committed to their side. It's almost like a political discussion in this day and age, but Gene Smith, you almost got the sense from Gene Smith that if there is some federal rules that everybody's playing by the same rules, Gene Smith would be okay with having some sort of name, image, likeness rights for college players.
For sure. That's definitely the impression that's essentially kind of what he said. Also had a tweet about it that kind of alluded to that. I'm very pro players' rights. I always have been. I think they should get some sort of compensation, much more than they do currently. But like Gene Smith said, it needs to be level all the way across. I mean, you can't have certain states doing different things. I mean, that just is kind of weird. I don't think doing that would necessarily unlevel the playing field. I just think it'd be kind of goofy for different people to be playing by different rules.
And that's something that's going to be very much in the spotlight for the next several weeks, months, and going into 2020. And interestingly, former Ohio State wide receiver Anthony Gonzalez, he is now a U.S. representative in Northeast Ohio, and he has talked about perhaps introducing legislation in the Congress to move this forward, which from what we're hearing from Gene Smith would love to see that happen, and it's very interesting that a former Buckeye might make it happen in the U.S. House.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I don't know if you remember, I mean, when Gonzalez was a player, he was very outspoken about these types of issues. So, I mean, it's pretty cool to see him have the platform he has now and then try to make change. And, I mean, he's lived it. So, I mean, there's several athletes that are, congressmen and senators, and I think most of them, they lived that reality of how difficult it is. I know it seems like their lives are amazing and everything, but they all come from different backgrounds. And I mean, some of them truly do struggle. So I think anything they could do to, get more money in their pockets is a good thing.
Going back to this Michigan State matchup on Saturday, perhaps we could have an all Northwest Ohio punt-off in this game. Zach Hoover, backup punter for Ohio State. But Jake Hartberger from Anthony Wayne, he is the starting punter for Michigan State. He's had a very good season so far. I think he's got 10 punts over 50 yards as he got his 6th year of eligibility. And I know we talked with Mark D'Antonio back in July in Chicago. He was very excited about having Jake back, and Jake certainly lived up to the hype for Michigan State so far.
Yeah, he's been great. I mean, been pretty good his whole career, honestly. And I thought he deserved the 6th year of eligibility. I watched that game last year. I think it was Arizona State he was injured. Almost contributed to them losing because they had issues punting in the rest of the game. But, yeah, I mean, he's obviously one of the best punters in the Big Ten. And special teams could play very much into the outcome of the game. I mean, D'Antonio is a Tressel disciple.
Yes,
Obviously, he's going to try to muck it up. He wants this to be a Tressel ball type of game and limit possessions and change field position or whatever. So an Anthony Wayne kid could play out big. And in 2015, obviously, Michael Geiger broke Buckeye fans' hearts everywhere.
Yeah, I think he is still pinwheeling down the sideline somewhere as he kicked the game-winning field goal. I want to thank Kyle Rowland from the Toledo Blade for joining us tonight. Kyle, thank you.
Thank you.